This is the Eat Well, Think Well, Live Well podcast. I'm Lisa Salisbury, and this is episode 70, The Power of Food Prep with Amy Lawrence. Welcome to Eat Well, Think Well, Live Well, the podcast for women who want to lose weight but are tired of counting and calculating all the food. I'm your host, Lisa Salisbury. I'm a certified health and weight loss coach and life coach, and most importantly, a recovered chronic dieter. I'll teach you to figure out why you are eating when you aren't hungry instead of worrying so much about what you are eating. I know we are all busy this time of year, so I wanted to get this episode published sooner rather than later. I know we've been publishing one interview after another lately, but I thought this conversation was so timely that I wanted to get it out to you. Getting ahead on meals has always been important to me. In fact, in another life, I used to teach freezer meal workshops. So when Amy asked if she could come on the podcast and share her method, I was happy to say yes. We share many of the same methods. She has just really dialed it in and has way more ideas for you than I do. And she shares several tools that she uses. I found all those things actually and linked them in the show notes for you. So if you're dying to use some of those things that she mentioned, you can find them in the show notes. Speaking of this busy time, I didn't re-record my Handling the Holidays episode from last year, but I wanted to make sure that you knew about it. It's episode 15. It's called 6 Tips to Handle the Holidays, and I've linked it in the show notes as well. So that is there for you. It's still a great episode to really help get you dialed in. Just a few little tips for you to think about during this season. Lastly, before we get into this episode, I want to remind you I'm extending my Get Unstuck session availability through the end of this calendar year. I want to make sure you're ready to hit 2024 running. So link to get your session scheduled is, again, in the show notes. I've had a couple people come just to discuss how to make it through the holidays, and that has been super helpful for them. But everyone that has done this has been like, wow, I have never thought of it that way. I think that's probably the most common comment I get. So I can't wait to talk to you and help you also get unstuck. If you're thinking like, well, this really isn't the best time, I don't know how I would start something like that at this time of year, I want to remind you that by waiting, anytime we wait to start something, if we think, well, we'll be less busy, then we're just reinforcing the kind of like overeat diet cycle mentality. We're just reinforcing the diet mentality of there has to be a good time to do it. There has to be a less busy time. There really is no better time than during the holidays to start paying attention to your health and weight loss, because if you can do it then, you can do it anytime. And there just really is no better time to let your brain know we don't actually have to overindulge in order to have an amazing time with our friends and family. Now, just so you know, that doesn't mean I'm not going to try every single thing on the Thanksgiving table tomorrow. I absolutely am. But there's a difference between overeating every single thing and trying every single thing. So anyway, lots to know about the holidays. It's really a great time. Don't wait. As I always say, you can start working on your health on the very next bite. It is my very next bite strategy. So without further ado, let's get into my conversation with Amy. Welcome to the Eat Well, Think Well, Live Well podcast. I have Amy Lawrence here, who is an author and a blogger, and we are going to talk about something I've never talked about before on the podcast, which is food prep. So obviously, you know, if you've been listening for any length of time, I encourage pre-planning your food, just deciding ahead of time with your higher brain what you're going to eat. Usually that's happening the day of, you're planning for the day, but there is some value in preparing food well in advance. And that's what Amy and I are going to be talking about today. So I'm super excited. Welcome, Amy. If you could introduce yourself and tell everybody what you do and how you came to this work, that would be great.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited. Yes, I'm Amy Lawrence, and I have a food blog called Gourmet Done Skinny, but I didn't always have that. I was in the tea business for a long time. I was a special ed teacher, did a bunch of different things. Life was going along great in 2014, and I had a Pilates accident actually and tore my vertebral artery, and it caused a stroke. And so after that, I kind of had a wake-up call to life. I sold my tea business. I decided to go to India and see all the different tea fields. And when I got back from India, I saw the pictures and oh my gosh, I had gained like 40 pounds. And it was all from I was just grateful to be alive. And so I was just eating whatever the heck I wanted. And when I saw those pictures, I'm just like, I mean, I knew I'd gained weight, but oh my God, it was just so depressing. And like everybody else, or I don't know, but that's how I feel. When you want to lose weight, what do? You join Weight Watchers. So I did that.
Or all the fad diets. Yeah. Lots of my clients and listeners have done all the diets. So yeah, Weight Watchers is right up there.
Exactly. And so I did that and I lost 40 pounds and, and I was happy, but I was not happy with their recipes. And when I had a tea room in Northern California for many years and I created my own recipes, of course, those were all like butter, sugar, fat, but I thought if I could create those recipes, I could certainly create healthier recipes. And so that's how my blog, Gourmet Done Skinny, was born. And so I was doing that, but I was really tired of the whole counting the points and saving your points for the weekend. It was all about the food and there was just so much stress wrapped around the food. It just drove me crazy. And so I knew there had to be a better way. So I started digging into more intuitive eating. And I found a coach that I worked with, and it was just wonderful. I learned a lot of different principles about only eating when you're hungry and all those kinds of great things. And so life was going along great with her. And one day she asked me to be a guest speaker in her membership group. And she said, "Do you mind talking about food prep?" And I said, "Yeah, no problem." And I hadn't really thought about it. I mean, I did a lot of food prep for me, but I just hadn't really thought about it teaching other people until she asked me to teach that class. And so I taught the class to her members and oh my gosh, they were so excited. They had never, I just thought my techniques were just, normal, whatever, but apparently they weren't. And so that got everybody excited. It got me excited. So I ended up writing my book, The Power of Food Prep. And that's the one that went #1 on Amazon International and US. And then from then, at the same time, I decided to do a food prep membership. And so that's how that got born. And so I am such a proponent of food prep. And the way I do food prep is a little bit different.
So, I mean, first of all, and this is a really common question that I ask most of my clients is I always start out with the why. Why would we even care about this? Why would we bother food prep? Why not just make every meal when you're ready to go?
Right. Well, it's a great question. Food prep saves you time, it saves you money, it saves you stress, and it saves you calories. And the thing is, we're going to eat and we're going to eat what is available. And if we have healthy food available, we're going to more likely eat healthy food than if we have, junky food available. And so it's a self-care. That's how I look at it. Doing something nice for yourself.
So in those things, like, tell me more, like, how does it save you time and money? How does it save you calories? Even though we don't count calories in my program, calories are still a measure of energy. And so it still is something to know about because it is a measure of energy.
Right, exactly. And I don't count calories anymore either. However, so here's a good example. When I'm making, my idea of food prep isn't the 5 black boxes that you see with chicken, rice, and broccoli, and you eat the same thing every day. And that's not my idea at all. My idea is, making a wonderful meal and preserving it for later or preserving the parts for later. And I'm a big proponent of using the freezer. So an example of how you might, save calories or save yourself some time and some headache. When I make a batch of cookies, say, I will double a batch of cookies and I will take a little tiny ice cream scoop and I will scoop out all the little cookies. I'll flash freeze them, which means you put them on a baking sheet with parchment paper and you just stick it in the freezer just like that. No covering, no nothing. Then when they're frozen, then I package them into little packs, about 6 in a little pack. And then whenever we want, say we do want some dessert and we plan for it and we're like, that sounds good. Okay. So then we will thaw out, it takes 15 minutes. We'll thaw out that little pack of 6 cookies and I'll toast them up in the toaster oven and everybody gets one. But it's a nice little treat that you've kind of planned for. And it isn't like the cookies are on the counter and every time you go by the counter, you grab a cookie. It's all, it's just 6 little cookies that you made. They're fresh. They taste wonderful. And then that's it. And so the focus is on having a nice little treat whenever you want it, but not overindulging, not making that big batch of cookies and eating the whole batch. And so that's my method is a lot like that. I do everything in little portions. I freeze things in portions. And then that way, when you go to your freezer, you might pull out, like I don't know what I'm having for dinner tonight, but I'll just go to my freezer and maybe I'll pull out some chicken. Maybe I'll pull out some caramelized onions, some pesto, and maybe I'll whip it all up and put it in a pasta. Maybe I'll put some things over salad. It all depends on what I'm in the mood for at the time. And so the way my method works is you make things ahead of time, but it's not the big cook day like everybody thinks about meal prep. I have 3 different methods that I use for prepping.
Let's get into that. Tell us how your method is different and what it looks like to food prep the way you teach it.
Sure. So there's 3 different parts. There's the big cook day, like everybody thinks, the big exhausting where you cook everything. You make, all the lasagna or all the enchiladas or whatever you're making, and then you freeze it. But it takes all day. And that's what most people think of. They think of that, it's just exhausting. And then there's batch cooking. So like, I'll do is I'll make a batch of my crustless chipotle egg cups, which are great for breakfast. And so that's what I call a batch. So you might make a batch of something. And then for breakfast, I might pull one of those out. And then it takes, about 30 to 60 seconds in the microwave or toast it up in the toaster oven. There's lots of things. I get all excited about food prep, but people always think that you can just reheat things in the microwave and that's the best way. And that's not always the best way. So there's different ways of reheating things. But that might be the batch cooking. So I'll pull out the chipotle eggs and I'll either put them in the microwave or toast them up in the toaster oven. And then there's also what I call the multiply it method. So if you think about it, if you're going to make a batch of, say, chili or spaghetti or whatever,
like for dinner that night, like I'm going to make spaghetti tonight for dinner.
Yeah. Okay. So here's a good example. You're going to make spaghetti. So you've got to make a list. You've got to go to the store. You've got to make the food. You need to do all the dishes and put it all away. And so you do that. Now, if you think about it, if you would just multiply that by 2 times, just 2 times, you save all, because you're going to go to the store anyway to get the ingredients. So why not get double? You're going to cook it. It's going to take maybe a little bit more time, but not really much. And then you're going to eat it and then you put away the rest. Now the portioning takes a little bit of time. And the way I portion is way different than other people. A lot of people will portion like a casserole. They'll portion the whole casserole. I don't do it that way. I portion things in 1 cup increments. So like when I make my bolognese sauce, I portion it into 1 cup increments in a little bag. And so then I'll pull out, and it depends whoever's here for dinner. I mean, we have kids that aren't here half the time. So they visit or whatever. And so I'll pull out, if I know everybody's going to be here, I might pull out 2 cups of that bolognese. Whereas if not, if it's just me, then I might just pull out 1 cup. And so it all depends on what you need. And the thing is, food doesn't go to waste. And when you package it, like you're supposed to, like if you do it in the vacuum seal bags, it keeps all the air from getting out. It prevents freezer burn. Because a lot of times people don't like meals in the freezer because they don't taste good. And so if you suck all that air out, you prevent all that freezer burn, then they'll taste great. And they last for a long time, which is great.
So you're using a food saver.
Something like a
product.
Food saver, yeah. Yeah, I mean, Food Saver is one of the things you could use. I actually use a different one that I like better, but
a different brand.
A different brand, yeah. I like Innova just because it's only 3 buttons and it's easy and it's cheaper and
okay.
Yeah.
But any kind of vacuum sealer.
Any kind of vacuum seal, because when you put something in, just say even a Ziploc bag in the freezer, it has freezer burn in less than a week. I mean, it's fast.
Mm-hmm.
And
it is fast.
Yeah. And the thing is, if you take your time, if you're going to take a little bit of time to prepare your spaghetti, you want it to be the best it's going to be. And so if you vacuum seal it away, that spaghetti, I mean, literally it'll last over a year for sure. If you've done it, right. Mm-hmm. And didn't allow the air in.
Mm-hmm. And just to clarify, I'm sure this is what you're talking about. You're not talking about saucing up the spaghetti and putting it all in the noodles. You're talking about just the sauce.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Some pasta you can freeze a little bit, but like for spaghetti, I wouldn't. So what I would do is I'd go to my freezer, I'd pull out my spaghetti sauce, and then I would saute up some vegetables that night, which takes literally 5 or 10 minutes. And then make your pasta, which takes, about 11 minutes for the pasta to heat up and cook, and then just whip it all together. So less than 20 minutes, you've got a meal that's fresh.
So it sounds like sometimes you do the big cook day then, because you said there's 3 ways. So sometimes you do the big cook day.
Yeah. Mostly I don't though. I mostly do the multiply it method because that works best for me.
So it's basically multiplying things that you're already going to make for dinner.
Right.
just make more.
Right. But it all depends too on the part. So you might do, it depends. Not everything you can freeze. So I will do the batch it method. Like say I'll make a whole bunch of grilled chicken. I'll go to Costco and I'll buy one of those 7-pound bags of the boneless, skinless chicken, and I'll brine it, and then I'll put it on the grill, and it takes me about an hour and a half to 2 hours. And then I've got it all cooked. I'll chop it up and I'll put it into little 1-cup packages. And then whenever we want, like, say pasta with that, or salad, or wraps, or green bowls, or whatever you want to do, you've got chicken already to go. So I'll do that as well.
Nice. Sometimes what I do with my meat from Costco is just kind of one step back from what you're doing, which is I'll cut it up and season it and then freeze it with my food saver. So actually, like last weekend, I pulled out a flank steak that had a marinade on it. And I was like, okay, just grill this up. And I sliced it for fajitas. So I'll do a lot of that where I don't like to freeze meat in packages that it comes home from the store or from Costco in, because it takes so much longer to thaw out when it's in that like big thick brick kind of meat.
No, exactly.
Yeah, I'll slice it up, especially with chicken. I a lot of times will cube it up for stir fry and then put it flat in the bag, or I'll pound it flat so it's ready to put in the skillet. So that's kind of like one step back really from doing the whole grilling method. And I think that has helped me quite a bit. That's one of the things that I do for food prep. But I have done what you're talking about, which is like multiplying things and just, if I'm going to go to the effort, I might as well make it twice.
That's exactly how it is. But the thing is too, like and you already have a food saver, or food sealer, which is great, because a lot of people don't do that step, or like they'll make a batch of soup, but then they won't portion it out. And so they'll just freeze a whole batch of soup. Like you said, it takes forever for it to thaw out. Whereas if you portion soup into 1-cup portions, you can go in your freezer. I have a box that says soup. I've got all these different kind of soups in my freezer. Everybody can pick out which kind they want, and then we heat it up and have dinner. I mean, it's quick. So, yeah.
So on that kind of thing, I do have to say, and maybe it's different by different brands of vacuum sealers. How do you successfully vacuum seal something that's very, very liquidy, like chicken noodle soup or something? I have such a hard time with that. So those are the kinds of things I just store in glass mason jars with just, leave a significant amount of headspace if you're going to do that, because of course it will expand.
Right.
It's a little bit different when you've got it in the plastic bags with the food saver. But what's your best method on freezing things that are very liquidy?
There's a trick, obviously, with the food sealer. I balance it on the counter, and then I kind of let the liquid hang down, and then you do it that way. But there's been a huge game changer in the last few years. And I don't know if you've heard of super cubes, but they are, oh my gosh.
Seen those.
Yeah, but I take it one step further. So the super cubes are like little
I've heard of them, but the other listeners may not have. So tell us what super cubes are.
Yeah, so they're silicone molds, and you can actually bake in them as well. I don't typically, because I like baking in pans, but you make your soup, and then you put it in these silicone molds. Like they look like mini, well, they have different sizes, but the ones I like are the 1-cup for soup. And there's like 4 in a little mold. And so you put the soup in there, you put the lid on, and then you freeze it. Now, that works fine, but however, I don't like my super cubes always taken up with whatever's in there. Because I prep all the time. I mean, every time I cook, I pretty much save something. And so what you do with the super cubes is you let it thaw out for about 15 minutes, and then you can pop those little guys out, and they're little bricks. And then you vacuum seal the little bricks, and then they'll last a lot longer. So just in the super cubes themselves, I don't feel like they still can get freezer burned.
Right. But and I've looked at them. I actually don't own any of them. They're a little bit spendy. So if you want to have a lot of them to have enough
soup,
and
you don't need to have a lot of them if you do it my way. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a good idea, to just get a small set, and then you can pop them out, and then they're ready for the next time you make broth or soup. Another thing that I do that I think is really applicable for the super cubes, which is why I keep looking at them. I need to just pull the trigger and get them. But when I roast a whole chicken, or even sometimes I do this with a rotisserie chicken from Costco, is I throw that in my Instant Pot and I make chicken broth, or
definitely. Yeah.
Bone broth is what you're making really when you're using bones, some vegetables in there, water, you can get a recipe anywhere for this. But I generally, in the past, what I do with that is I put it in mason jars. I just have gobs and gobs of mason jars from my grandmother and my mom. So they're just like coming out my ears sometimes. But trying to thaw out a quart of chicken broth when I need a half a cup for the recipe is so annoying.
Oh, totally.
So I'm like, I have got to get some of those super cubes. But that's another way to just kind of get ahead too, is even if you're not making soup that week, if you've got bones, throw those in the Instant Pot and make some bone broth, because that makes the best soup.
Oh, it does. And I have a couple of those recipes. I have a beef bone broth on my website for Instant Pot, and also a chicken one. And the great thing about the super cubes for the bone broth too is, and because I do this, so I have a lot of them, but I have the 2-cup ones and I also have the half-cup ones. And so what I'll do is, when I make my bone broth, I will freeze them, some in 2 cups, some in 1 cup, some in half cup. And then when a recipe calls for 2.5 cups, I can just, I can make it mix and match it for whatever I need it for. Yeah.
Definitely. Impressive.
Yeah.
So I think there's probably some people out there that are like, oh my gosh, this sounds like a lot of work. Those people must be really organized. Like, nope. I mean, I'm not like, I don't have like the full book like Amy does, but a lot of these things I highly recommend. This is the way I food prep as well, which is why I had Amy on, by the way, because it's boring for me to just talk by myself about it. So I think these ideas are so great. I think it's just makes your planning for the way we do planning each day, your 24-hour plan, so much easier, because you can just look in the freezer, see what you've got, see what you can pull out, see what can be fast and easy for that day if you've got a busy day. Or maybe you look at your day and you're like, today I have some time. So today I'm going to make something from scratch, and it's a doubling day or a tripling day. And also, I just want to throw out, this is such a great time of year. I hope I get this published before the holidays, because I was just talking to my sister-in-law, and it was the first week in November that she told me this. And she was like, well, I'm going to Costco. I'm going to do some food prep. I've got all the kids coming for Thanksgiving. She's got older young adult kids. And she's like, everyone's coming for Thanksgiving. So, I'm going to get some granola in the freezer. I'm going to get this sauce and that. And I thought, so smart, so smart. It's just so handy to get ahead. Like, you can make your cranberry sauce for Thanksgiving ahead of time.
Totally. Yeah.
I mean, there's so many things, so that on the day of, for these kinds of events, and like you said, the cookies, if you've got cookie exchanges coming up at Christmas, you can do so much of that.
It just makes your life so much easier.
Yeah, it really does. Is when on a day when you have time is the day, as opposed to, the day where it's crazy. And then you're like, oh no, and I have this party tonight. So anyway, it sounds like Amy and I are really organized, but
well,
or maybe
I'm
like
not.
a little type A.
I'm not, let me tell you.
Yeah. So like, how do you do this if you're like not really a type A?
Yeah. And I guess I'm a wannabe type A. So in my freezer, I have like what I call plastic boxes, and it might say soup, it might say meat, it might say chicken broth. And then so things are just thrown in there. When the box gets low, then I pull out whatever, then I decide I need to make some more. But the way my method works is you cook 3 days a week. So, and it depends on how you want to do things. But like every Sunday I clean out my refrigerator and I look to see like what vegetables need to be used up. And I might make, spicy roasted vegetables, and I'll make those up for the week. And then I look at my week and I see what kind of time I have this week. Oh, maybe Tuesday I can make something. So I pick 3 recipes for the week that I want to make. And then on the other days, I just go to my freezer and I just pull out, if we have sliders in there, we might pull out sliders. One little tip that's kind of a nice little tip, like if you ever go to Costco and you buy like croissants or their ciabatta bread or any of their good bread, most of the time, nobody ever eats all that really. I mean, unless you got a lot of kids.
Yeah.
And so what I do is, because they're so big. So I'll just bring home, like say the croissants, and I'll figure out how many we're going to eat in the next couple days. And the rest I will package into 2 in a bag, and I will suck the air out. You kind of have to be careful. You want to use the pulse setting and not the regular, because you don't want to deform the bread. And then I'll throw those in the freezer. And then whenever we need, like if we have soup and we want a little piece of bread, or like if I want a little sandwich, I'll pull out one of those croissants. I'll put it in the microwave wrap it in a paper towel for about 20 seconds. Then I'll split it, and then I'll put it in the toaster oven for about 3 minutes on broil. about 400 degrees. Of course, it's not as great as if you just went to Costco and got it, but it's pretty darn good. I mean, it really is. And you saved yourself all this money because you're not buying croissants all the time and you're making it all last. And I do that with pretty much any bread, any nice, good artesian bread. I'll put like a couple slices at a time. And what I'll do is like, you don't want to put like slices all packed together. You want to kind of layer them a little bit, like 2 or 3, however many you think you might eat, and then freeze it that way. And then that way it thaws out a lot quicker. But always use the toaster oven when you're going to do bread to toast it up just a little bit. So,
yeah. I make the majority of my bread. So one of the things that I do is I usually make 5 loaves of sandwich bread at a time, just because, again, same idea here. If I'm going to make 1 loaf of bread, I might as well make 5 loaves of bread because that's how many pans I have. But I only have 1 child at home that I make sandwiches for lunch. And so I actually slice it all up and I double bag it. I don't use the food saver for that, only because what I do is then each morning when I make her lunch is I pull out 2 pieces and I make her lunch on literally frozen bread, which is nice because it kind of keeps the lunch cold, for a little bit longer. And then it's like she has fresh bread like every single day. So, when you buy bread from the store and it's already sliced, you can freeze that. So I've just decided, why don't I just slice it before I freeze it? And that has really helped a lot. Okay. Do you have any ways we can get ahead on simple lunches? I noticed that for my clients, lunch seems to be the sticking point. They don't know what to make. And usually it's because breakfast tends to be easy for my clients. Eggs or oatmeal, it feels easier for them. Dinner tends to be more planned out because many of my clients tend to be the cook for their families. Not always, but they tend to be. So that's kind of like, well, I'm going to be making something for the whole family. Whereas lunch tends to be something they're making just for themselves. Kids are eating lunch at school or they're needing, they're at work. And so they're eating lunch by themselves meaning without their families. And so I find that people get really stuck on what should I eat for lunch?
And the good thing is like with my method, you really don't get stuck because whatever you're making, if you're doubling it and you're putting, like I have this drawer that's called the grab and go drawer, and it's just one off. So like there's 1 piece of lasagna, 1 slider, or one piece of whatever, and those make great little lunches. The other thing is grilled chicken makes a great lunch for anything. I mean, if you've already got it grilled and you throw a salad together, super easy. I've got a lot of salad dressings that you make up and it'll last 2 weeks in the fridge. So you're not having to make that up every day. The other thing I like to do is like the spicy roasted vegetables that I was talking about earlier. I have another one that's called Indian cauliflower medley. You make that up and it'll last about 4 or 5 days in the fridge. And then you can pull that out and put that with some grilled chicken, put some like green salsa on it. You could do a wrap, you could do a bowl. I mean, there's all sorts of different things. So really, with my method, it's real easy to I just go to the freezer and whatever looks good. I've got this orzo that I made a couple weeks ago for my members and I was talking about it and I can pull that out in 30 seconds. It'll be hot and ready to go. Soups are great, have them frozen and just ready to go. Are you talking about more people that work somewhere else or work from home?
Oh, both. I have clients in both situations, but
because most of the time everybody has a microwave,
at work,
wherever they are. Toaster oven helps though. I mean, because not everything does well with the microwave. But anyway, those are just some of my, those are some of my quick But the thing is, that's so great. And like my son, I mean, he's living at home right now, and he takes whatever he wants to work. Like today, he took leftover ribs that we had, like I don't know, last month. And we just packaged them in little pieces, in little bags. And he took that and a couple of rolls. He just grabs that and goes, or he'll take little sliders or, whatever. But the thing that's great is it doesn't matter. I mean, you can just take whatever dinner recipe you had because I package everything into 1 or 2 portions. And so it's easy to grab whatever you want for this. So, yeah.
So a lot of times when I'm talking to people for the podcast, I think of what my listeners are thinking. And I'm wondering if anyone's thinking, that feels like a lot of frozen. Like, what if I don't like frozen food? How else can you meal prep? Is there other ways that you use?
I mean, I do a lot in the fridge too, but the thing about frozen is you can have great tasting things. If you leave it in the fridge, it doesn't, I like things fresh. So what I do is I'll make the meat dish and I'll put that in the freezer. But then I'll do sauteed veggies. Everything, all the veggies I pretty much do fresh at the time, because they don't take very much time. But that is my method. My method, it does have to do with the freezer. But I think a lot of people think too that they just think they're going to stick it in the microwave. And that's not, that's one way to reheat, but that's not always the best way. There's like little tricks and tips. So like, here's an example of just when we order, and you could do it with homemade pizza too, but when we order pizza, like the kids will order pizza and stuff, and I like Pizza Hut. They don't. They like something else. I'll order a pizza and I'll eat one piece, and then I'll put the rest in single little packs in the freezer. And then when they order pizza again, I'll pull out mine. But there's a trick to do it. I mean, people just think, "Ooh, microwave pizza, yuck." Well, if you do it my way, it's not yuck at all. So I microwave it for about 20 seconds, and then I'll put it in the toaster oven for about 3 minutes, and it crisp it up. And so I think a lot of the hesitation with the frozen food is they think it's just going to be this yucky, globby mess, and it's not. I mean, it all depends on how you reheat things.
The reheating is the key.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I make a lot of stir fry type meals, whether they're curries or Asian stir fries, things that have meat and vegetables in them. How would you prep that ahead? Would you stir fry just the meat and put that aside and then just do the vegetables day of? Or what would you suggest for combo meals of that?
I pretty much do vegetables day of. I'm not a big frozen vegetable person at all. I like fresh veggies. And stir fries are so quick. So to me, I mean, well, what I might do though, and I have been doing this, there's this great meat at Costco, actually. It's very thinly sliced beef. And so I'll get that, and you get the big thing, and I'll package that up in like little tiny packages of maybe 1 cup. And I'll chop up the meat raw, like we were talking about earlier. And then I'll freeze that in the pouches. And then when I want to make stir fry, it doesn't take long for that to thaw either. And I will make a homemade hoisin sauce. And sometimes I will freeze that in little tablespoons, or my green scallion sauce. I'll freeze that in the tablespoons. And so then, when I'm ready to do the stir fry, I'll do the vegetables. I'll throw in the meat. I'll throw in a tablespoon of the hoisin sauce or the green scallion sauce. And there you go. And leftover rice, actually, in my opinion, I usually have 40 minutes, but not everybody does. And I do freeze leftover. But I mean, rice is very easy to freeze, so you could totally do that. The other great thing too about the super cubes, the 2-cup ones that they have, if you put in rice in the bottom and you put in, you could put in stir fry. I like it better fresh, but you could put in your meat and your vegetables in there. The cool thing about the 2-cup super cup cubes is you can freeze that just like that. And it's and then I put some, you can put some hoisin sauce on it or something and freeze it just like that. And then you can just pop that out, and that's like a whole bowl ready to go. That would be a great lunch. I mean, that's a time where I might do that just so I have a quick lunch.
Yeah. That's a great idea. So just to recap, I think this is just a good point. If you do like things that are kind of combo meals where they're meat and vegetable all together, that's where you might want to be prepping just the raw meat. Exactly. And you're not pre-cooking it. And honestly, like you think like, oh, that's not that really food prep to just cut up meat ahead. It makes a huge difference, because then you don't have that meaty knife and cutting board. You're only doing those dishes once. Like when I have pre-cut up meat, I'm like, that felt like half the meal is already done. I know, it feels dramatic, but it really does make a difference. So I think that's a good note on those kind of combo meals. I just tend to make those a lot. I tend to make a lot of skillet meals, or just things where it's all kind of tossed in the same skillet with the sauce. But you can always do sauces ahead, and like you said, salad dressings and things like that.
And you could do that grilled chicken and just throw, cook your little veggies in your wok and then throw in the grilled chicken at the last minute. And so then that would already be ready to go.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Having grilled chicken on hand is like a game changer for a lot of people, if you know what to do with it, not just plain grilled chicken, but
Another thing I love to make ahead, I know we're just kind of like getting a little random here, but if you are making a batch of meatballs, oh my goodness, I love having meatballs in the freezer. And I do the same thing you do with the cookies, which is flash freeze those.
Yep.
And so I'll just do them fairly neutral, like well seasoned with salt and pepper and, maybe just a neutral like parsley, something like that. And then they go in teriyaki sauce over rice with sauteed veggies. They go in spaghetti. They go in with tzatziki and tomato and cucumber. And they go in a pita for like a little Greek gyro. There's so many things you can do with turkey meatballs. I like
totally
turkey. And
yeah, totally. And vegetarian meatballs. But yeah, meatballs are so versatile. And you can put them in a wrap. You could put them on a sandwich. You could put them on a pizza. I mean, there's so many different things that you could do with meatballs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you seen the Meatball Master? I have to tell you about it. I'm in love with it. Oh my gosh, it's the best thing since sliced bread. It's this meatball thing. So you pack it full of whatever you're doing, and then you put the top on, and it cuts the meatballs. You have to push really hard. You're supposed to be able to freeze it just like that, but I think it's too hard to get out. So I just use it as a cutter. And then you've got 32 meatballs. And I mean, you literally spent no time making them. So it's just so fantastic. The only downside is I don't make my meatballs quite that big. So it's a little bit bigger meatball. Yeah. Like maybe I would probably eat one or two versus, 3 of my tiny ones.
Yeah. But, I use a cookie scoop to portion. There are a lot of things out there that can help us get ahead. I mean, don't fill your kitchen with just gadgets. Fill your kitchen with tools that really help you in the kitchen. But yeah, having the right tools certainly makes a big difference. In fact, that's probably one of my biggest kitchen tips when my clients are starting to cook more from home is get a good quality knife, get a good quality cutting board, and one really amazing pan, and just start there. And so all of these extra little tools are extras, but
yeah, you don't necessarily need all that, but
yeah.
But the meatball, I think that is, and the super cubes, those two things are really great for food prep. So keep those in mind.
Good. All right. Any last tips before I let you go?
Oh, I guess one of my little tips, and it sounds dumb, but it really is true. When you plan your menu and you go shopping, do not shop and cook on the same day. You go to Costco, you see avocados, you grab all this stuff, everything looks good, you have all these plans, you're going to make all this stuff. And when you get home, what happens? No, you order pizza because you're exhausted. So you don't. You go to the freezer, you pull out, with my method, you pull out whatever you want, but you don't cook on the same day that you shop because it's too much. It's a lot of work. So that's one of my little tips.
I do sometimes. I'm like, okay, going to Costco. I'm going to be a hunter-gatherer. Like it feels like that much work, right?
It is. You got to put it in the basket. You got to put it in the car. You got to put it in the house.
Yeah.
And you have all these grand plans. That's the thing. I come back, I go to Costco and I think I'm going to make this, this, and this. And then I get home and I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm exhausted. No. So.
All right. Yeah. Be kind to yourself and look at your calendar, see when you have time and plan a little extra time. But I just love how a lot of your method revolves around cooking when you're already cooking. I think that's a huge time saver. Huge time saver is to think, what am I already cooking that I can make more of? That is just so valuable. Okay. Well, thanks again, Amy, for being here. Where can people find you online? Or obviously your book is on Amazon.
My book's on Amazon, The Power of Food Prep. And I'm Gourmet Done Skinny online as far as my food blog. And then my membership is Food Prep for Foodies, which I'm working on a new website just for that. But you can find information about that on Gourmet Done Skinny. So.
Great. Well, we'll put all those links in the show notes, of course. And you have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
If this episode has helped you in any way, all I ask is for you to share it. Share it with one friend or share it on your social media. Tag me and I'll give you a shout out as well. I have been getting a lot of comments lately about how beneficial the free content is that I have been putting out in the world, and sharing it can really help someone else. You can also leave a 5-star rating on Apple and Spotify and review the show on Apple Podcasts. That also really makes it easier for other people to find it because Apple loves that, and then they push it out to more people. So your review actually helps other women. Have a great week. And as always, thanks for listening to the Eat Well, Think Well, Live Well podcast.